Zora Neale Hurston, born in 1891, is the first black female writer to ever make a living from her written work. And this is the story of how she braved the challenges she faced in every stage of her life. In her childhood, until the age of 13, Zora grew up in Eatonville, Florida, in the US, a gifted town for the blacks as it was one of the few towns self governed by the blacks. She considers this as the golden age of her life. She had two passions in those years. First, she loved books and reading. She read everything she could get her hands on, but she was particularly drawn to the books on Greek mythology and its strongest characters like Hercules. Her second passion was to spend time listening to the stories of the locals as they gathered on the verandas and related or gossiped folk tales, many of them talking about black slavery times. What Zora loved was their manner of telling stories, the rich metaphors the locals added to them. Zora precisely liked the human nature revealed in its most naked form in these stories. Imagining these stories to create her own short stories in mind, someday she dreamt of becoming the best writer of her town. But her golden age was suddenly shattered by the death of her mother. Her father sent her outside of Eatonville to a boarding school and gradually stopped paying for her education. Zora wandered from one relative's house to another and finally took up housekeeping jobs to feed herself. Worn down by work and depression, Zora's only respite was to use her imagination to travel anywhere through her childhood stories that filled her mind. Her most important mind voice at this stage of life was if she kept herself confined to her narrow circumstances, it would be her own fault. So, thinking in this way, Zora Neale Hurston proceeded to create for herself one of the most self directed apprenticeships in history. She joined petty housekeeping jobs in wealthy white people's homes, where she found opportunities to lay her hands on a plenty of books. She would read portions of these books and quickly memorize passages that she would go over and over in her head in free time. One day, she discovered a discarded copy of Milton's Paradise Lost in the garbage can. She read it over and over, and in this way, her mind did not stagnate. In 1915, she landed a job as a lady's maid to the lead singer of an all white traveling troupe. There were books everywhere to read, interesting conversations to overhear. As part of the job, the troupe had trained her as a manicurist, and this skill helped her to find jobs in barbershops in the US capital of Washington, D.C. These barbershops were visited by powerful politicians of that time. They would gossip about the politics of the white world. Listening to these gossips taught her more about human nature, power, and the inner workings of the white world. While her world was slowly expanding, there were several limitations on where she could work and on the people she could meet because she lacked structured formal education. At the age of 25 years, Zora looked young for her age, and so chopping off 10 years in her application, she gained admittance to a free public school in Maryland. Then she made her way to the Harvard University and the Barnard College, where she made acquaintances with key figures in the black literary world. Further encouraged by her professors, who fell under her spell, she went on a tour through the south of the US to gather folk tales and stories. She used the trip to immerse herself in hoodoo, a religion characterized by spirit possession. She drowned herself in the richness of the black people's culture. In 1932, when the US fell under the tight grasp of the Great Economic Depression, she returned to her hometown, locked herself indoors, and wrote the book of a lifetime, Jonah's Good Wine. It was the distillation of all of her life's work completed in a few intense months. The book was an instant success because of its richness, and Zora became the most famous black writer of her time. This story is most vividly told in Robert Greene's evergreen book, Mastery. Greene explains through the life of Zora that no one is really going to help you or give you any direction. In fact, the odds are mostly stacked against you. Your access to knowledge and people is limited by your status. If you are not careful, you will accept the status bestowed on you And most importantly, you become defined by it, particularly if you come from a disadvantaged background. Like Zora, we must struggle against any limitations and continually expand our horizons. Exposing ourselves to the wide world without the fear of being judged or belittled will take us to places. Whenever you feel like you are settling into some circle, force yourself to shake things up and look for new challenges continually. This will ensure that no one can deny success to you.